Hodat from Pumpkin Glass, and today I'm going to do a short video to show you some tips on how to make your elastic wavy stacking bracelets. Got that out there. This is an example of a Picasso one here, and we have the metallic one. I should show you closer. There's the Picasso colors. They're more muted, and today we're going to be making one with what I call the brights mix. So let's get started. I've cut a 24-inch piece of 0.5 millimeter elastic and threaded it through my needle, and I'm going to use this doubled. So I want to line up the tails here and make sure that I've got a double piece of elastic going all the way through. And I'm going to start by deciding what wrist size I'm going to make this for. And I'm going to go with the 6.5 inch to 7 inch wrist size. So for that, we're going to use different numbers in different sections for the beads that we put on. So to start with, I'm going to pick up 3 of these beads one at a time, and I think this one escaped from the other color mix, so let me put him aside. And if you notice, there's 2 holes in this bead. What I'm going to do is on this first set, I'm going to go through the small hole at the end, but I'm going to poke through the other hole at the same time before I thread the bead, just to make sure that both holes are open. Sometimes you will get beads that don't have an open hole. So it's just a quick check to make sure that both of the holes are open before you get to the second strand, and then you've got to take them all off and start over. So I've got 3 on there, and this will be the first section, and I'm using the silver bars for this one. So let me bring them down closer and focus with the camera area. So I'm going to pick up one of those and slide that down. So that's section 1. Section 2 for this size is exactly the same. We're going to do 3 of these NibBit beads. They're called these little triangles, but we need to alternate sides. So I'm going to check the hole on the pointed end, and then I'm going to go through the hole. So check and go through the hole on the broad end of the bead. Check and go through the broad end. And what that's going to do when the bracelet's tightened, let me show you, it's going to make these alternate to form wave patterns. It's hard to show you on this one, so let me pick up this one. But the difference in the size of the beads in each section pulls the elastic so that you get these undulating waves if you alternate which hole you use. So the next section is section 3, and for section 3 and 4 we need to use 4 beads to make this work. So I went through the broad end before, so this time I'm going to go through the point, check, go through the point, and check and go through the point. Okay, so I've got 3, and I just kind of take a visual look at it to make sure it's right. And this section needs 4, so I'm going to do 1 more. So that's 4, and then a 2-hole bar, because we need a bar as a spacer between each section. Section 4 also is going to use 4 beads for this one. So I'm going to check and go through the broad end on all 4 of these beads. So 3, and let's add this bright green guy. And that makes 4. And again, see how my elastic is just going through that wide end. And I'm just going to scooch them all down a little bit. And another spacer bar. So I'm going to continue like this for the rest of the bracelet. This size takes 12 sections, and what I call a section are each of these groups in between a divider bar. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 on now, and sections 5 and 6, which are next, just take 3 beads, and then sections 7 and 8 takes 4. We have to keep the repeats in even numbers so that when we end, when we put the bracelet together, we need to start on a pointed strand and end on a wide section so that when they meet, we get this wave pattern, which is why you can't have an uneven number of sections. You just have to kind of play with how many beads you put in each section. So I'll join you in a second when I get the rest of the sections on. Hi, so I'm back, and I have this bracelet strung with all the beads alternating. I've got 12 sections. About half of them have 4, like we talked about, and the other half have 3 beads. I'm going to end with a bar. And then I'm going to put something called a bead stop on this end. It's a spring, and you squeeze it together, and you can put your stringing material in it. In this case, it's elastic. So I'm going to put that in there, so as I pull these down on the elastic and kind of get the gaps out of them, I don't pull my beads off the end of my strand. Okay, so I'm going to make sure everything's straight and come back around here to the beginning. And let me stay in frame here and take my spring off. And I'm going to tie a double knot. So I'm going to go around one time. I'll call it kind of like a tie your shoe knot. Let me do it again. Here, let me zoom in so we're a little bit closer. I have a hard time figuring out where my camera is. Here we go. So both strands together here in my hand. I'm just going to simply make half the knot, pull it up tight, kind of bounce it a little bit to get it nice and tight. And with the end that still has the needle on it, I'm going to wrap the other one, I'm going to wrap them around my finger here and take the needle, if I can line it up here, through that loop once and one more time. So that goes through twice to make a surgeon's knot. And before I tighten it up, you can use a T-pin for this. I like to use a beading awl. We have those at Pumpkin Glass here and online for sale. I'm going to pull my ends up with that beading awl in there so that I can get the tension nice and tight on this elastic. And then while it's still under tension, I'm going to slide my beading awl or pin out so I don't have any space here between my ends. I'm going to take some hypo-cement glue. You can use any kind of a glue except a super type glue. Super type glues will dry out the elastic and cause it to break. So I'm going to put that right on the knot. And we have the hypo-cement here available also. I'm going to take my cutters and clip the elastic pretty close I leave just a little bit of a tail because we're going to put a crimp cover on and that will hide it. But I don't know if you can see that. So I'm leaving just a little tiny bit of a tail next to the knot. Clip that off and let the glue seal that up. And then you want to have your chain nose pliers handy to close what we're going to do next, which is a crimp cover. So I'm going to spread this apart so that that knot, and sorry for the glue on my hands, it's right on my finger. And these are crimp covers. They look like little Pac-Men. And because the holes in this bracelet, the beads on this bracelet are small, we can't really pop the knot back in a hole. So I just slid the knot down inside that opened bead, and then I'm going to take my chain nose pliers now and across the bead, if I can get a hold of it here. There we go. And just carefully close it. Sometimes you have to change directions to keep it straight. And now that knot is nice and secure and inside that little, what looks like a little silver bead, so it's out of our way. Okay, so that's one strand finished. Let's start on the second one. Okay, I've cut my next strand of elastic. It's 24 inches long so that I can use it doubled. And I forgot to show you this in the first section. I'm going to pre-stretch it a little bit just to get the extra stretch out of the elastic. So I'm just working my way down. We want the extra stretch out of the elastic first before we string our bracelet on it. Then when the extra stretch comes out, you've got a loose bracelet. So, and I've gone through that big section in the middle of the eye of the needle, line my tails up, and then pop it up into that little tiny space at the top, and that's going to hold that elastic so it doesn't slide out. And with my existing bracelet, I want to find the section where I put those crimp covers, which is right here. You want to start and stop in the same place as you did the first strand so that your crimp covers are aligned together. So this side is easier because the beads are already strung. So I'm going to go through that top hole and I'm going to pull the cord up a little bit. And then I'm going to take a bead stop. And if you don't have a bead stop, you can also use a piece of painter's tape for this. It's, you know, a little bit harder to pull off, but it won't leave residue on your elastic. I'm going to put this bead stop on here to preserve a couple inches here at the beginning to tie my knot with so it doesn't pull through. And then I'm going to continue to go one or maybe two beads at a time, no more, through the hole that we haven't used yet on this bracelet. I don't want to get it tangled up here in my bead stop. Now, yes, you could probably put your needle through more than one hole at a time, but you really don't want to go through more than two at a time, because if you do, it really whacks up your needle because it's so hard to pull through, and you also risk fracturing your elastic in a few spots where you have to pull really hard. So I'm going to flip these over as I go so that all of those holes, and again, I only want to go through, and this one I can't get through a couple, so one at a time is fine. And if you notice while I'm doing this, I'm holding the bracelet in my hand so that I'm not getting all tangled up around the bracelet while I'm stringing. So I've got everything in my hand except for the beads that I'm needling through, which I'm pinching between my index finger and my thumb. So they're aligned and ready to go for me to put the needle through, and I don't have any problems with tangling. So I'm going to continue to do this like these when they align here. If you just want to do one at a time, just flip one back so that it automatically goes through a single hole without catching the next bead. All right, so I'm going to continue to work my way around the bracelet back to the start, and then we'll knot this strand off. Okay, I just finished stringing the bracelet for the second strand, and I'm sure yours looks the same as mine, and you're saying, Teresa, what did I do wrong because my bracelet is flat? Well, you didn't do anything wrong. It's just the second strand of elastic isn't as tight as the first strand. So we need to tighten this so that our bracelet becomes vertical, like this guy, instead of, see if we turn this one up on edge, we have the narrow sides of the beads facing out. So we just need to tighten up that first strand of elastic to make it vertical. And with my stopper still on here, I'm gonna, let's see if we can zoom in a little bit. I'm gonna tighten up this side where I ended and see how already this is straightening out here and is vertical here at the beginning. But I'm also going to push these down on this end towards my stopper just to kind of slide them down to the, because you have a little bit of trouble tightening up in the round from one direction. So that end, whoops, pulling it the wrong way. So this end's tighter. I'm going to move my stop to this strand that I was just tightening and go to the ends at the beginning, and I'm going to pull those up tight too. And as you can see, we are almost vertical. Okay, and I got the spring off of my elastic, which is a good thing. All right, so I'm still pulling on each side here a little bit. And I think once I tie this together, we're going to have a nice vertical bracelet. Okay, so that's looking pretty good to me now. And I'm going to tie the same kind of knot as we did before. And for those who know me, you're probably saying, Teresa, why aren't we tying a double overhand like we always do? Well, here's the reason. I generally like double overhand knots. An overhand knot is holding them all together, wrapping them around. And a double, you just go through the loop twice. But the problem with this bracelet is it wants to twist really badly, or really easily, maybe is the correct term. And about 50% of the ones I tried to tie double overhand knot on ended up twisted. So we're doing a surgeon's knot instead. So for that, I'm going to go through the loop once. I've got both my strands together, and see how when I pulled them together and tightened them, this bracelet became vertical like it's supposed to be. And then one more time, make my loop. Hopefully you can see that. And then I'm bringing the tails on one of the sides of the elastic, so it's two pieces, through twice. I'm going to hold that, put my beading awl in the loop to tighten down against, so I hold my tension. And I'm going to draw that awl out of the knot while I keep the elastic tight. Here we go. And grab my glue again and dab that on the knot. And you can use scissors. You don't have to use wire cutters to cut the elastic. It's just what I have here handy, generally, instead of scissors. So I'm going to clip those 4 pieces off. And again, hold this around my finger so that I can Oh, let me do that again. I think I was out of camera. Hold that around my finger so I can pull both sides of the bracelet down to expose that knot so I can see it easily. And slide, whoops, I had two in my hand. Slide my crimp cover over it. I usually turn the bracelet inside out when I do that so I can hold it in place easier. And then with my chain nose pliers, squeeze the sides together to close that gap. Sometimes the gap is still open. I don't know if you can see that right on top where they don't quite meet, and you can't, if you squeeze it any more this way, you end up denting your tube or your crimp cover. So you have to come in from the top and squeeze each side down a little bit to close that gap up. All right, so there we go. Actually, I'm still open just a little bit here. There. That's better. And technically, because I flipped it inside out, this is the inside of the bracelet where those seams are, so I can flip it back forward so that my little crimp covers are seamless. And my bracelet is finished. So thanks for joining me, and I hope you enjoy your kit. And you can also see more kits that we have available, and more tutorials are coming soon at pumpkinglass.com. Thank you.